you should be saving anyway. Like, I feel like anybody should be saving
Oh yeah.
money. Make a savings fund to like be able to give you that pillow. I mean, the way that I transitioned into freelance specifically was, um, I had a regular job. It was still in my career fields. Like, I worked at a recording studio, and then I worked at um, a corporate production studio, and I hated it. And there were some freelance opportunities I was able to do like in between those jobs, like on my 2 days off, I would take it. And what the biggest eye opener for me was just like the freedom in it. So I was in those jobs. I was slowly like you can transition into things, like if you're working, and that's what I tell a lot of people who are older and kind of are so set in their lives and their careers, or like just what they're doing in their life, is you can transition. Like, the like 10 minutes a day adds up. It really adds up. And if that means you're watching a 10-minute YouTube video every day on how to edit, or whatever that passion is that you have, like, that may seem like a little bit of time, but you can learn a lot in
Oh
in
yeah.
10 minutes. I mean, think of the time that you spend, I have an iPhone, right? And it tells you every Sunday, it tells you how many hours you spent on your phone. That freaks me out. I'm like, I've spent an average of 9 hours a day on my stupid little phone. Let me spare 10 minutes to watch a YouTube video, or let me spare 10 minutes to research, or let me spare 10 minutes. What I also tell people is, maybe you already have that set of skills, right? Like, you went to college for it, or you've been doing it since you were a kid. Create, like, do it 10 minutes a day. Like, write, go learn a new song on your guitar, like something. 10 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day. Like, you can use those little things to transition. And that's sort of what the timeline I feel like is, that's helpful, is like, find the time for it, to just do it as your passion and just get back into it, right? And then whenever you're at a comfortable point of whatever, the way that I found out about freelancing was through this woman. Her name's Alexandra Frizzulo, and she has a podcast called the Freelance Fairy Tales.
Hmm.
She and there's so many people who make 6-7 figures from Fiverr, Upwork. Now there's a bunch more. There's Revolancer. Like, there are so many freelancing platforms. And again, I'm specifically talking about freelance just because that's, as a creative, that's where I feel like you get the most freedom to do what you want. Because I find a lot of creatives like don't do well in like a normal structured job. But this is just me. Like, there's something for everybody's. People flourish in different environments, right? Um, but that building like a portfolio per se, and just getting your skills like ramped up and ready, put that on your resume. Like, make a website, like, and you can make a portfolio for free. Like, then you can start either freelancing on your own, and going on Fiverr or those freelancing sites, or now you can start applying for like entry level jobs, or like, there's so many Facebook groups nowadays where, like, I'm in a bunch where it's like, I need a podcast editor, or I need a production assistant. Like, there are everything is at our disposal nowadays. Like, if you want something that bad,
Hmm.
you have to put in the effort still. That's what I tell people a lot too, which is sort of ends up being a little bit discouraging, but it's like, working as a creative is just as time consuming as, and it's a real job.
Listen to the vibes.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Listen to the Vibes, and I have here Miss Catherine DiRosa, and you are a post-production assistant, and you also a creative, and you do freelance in film and media with a focus
Yep.
on audio.
Yes.
All right, and you help others, or what exactly do you do?
Yeah, so I have a podcast. My own podcast is about just getting other young creatives, whether it doesn't have to be necessarily in film or audio or media, just any creative field, helping them try and get to freelancing and freelancing full time, doing what they enjoy, their craft.
So have you worked on anything that I would know?
Um, there's a feature film coming out called Townhouse Confidential. Um, it hasn't gotten bought by any distributors yet, or I don't know if it's been distributed. But I was an associate producer on there. Um, it won a couple film festivals here in New York and also in LA and Chicago. Um, so stay tuned for that. But all the other work that I do, I've done some McDonald's commercials, um, and I also work over at the UN and do like broadcasting and their TV stuff there. So, but you don't get credited for that stuff. It's just
Yeah.
kind of like you're part of the crew. Um, but yeah,
Well, I've kind of gotten into indie films lately.
nice.
Kind of fed up with what's coming out of Hollywood lately, and I don't know. I'm seeing a shift to the independent
Hmm.
creators now. Have you noticed that?
Yeah. Well, it's so much easier now, like especially with the change from like back then everything was analog and like 10 times more expensive. And like, granted, stuff is still expensive now, but there's so much more of a market for affordable like equipment and tools to be able to just create. I mean, hell, your iPhone, like the camera quality on those, that'll get you by. Like, and then editing software is like YouTube University, like that's all you need.
Yeah, I was gonna say I actually saw a movie that was made on an iPhone, and it
Hmm.
looks the same quality as one of those
Right.
big fancy
Yeah,
cameras.
because they shoot in 4K. So it's like if you know a little bit about exposure and have a story and just are able to execute it, boom. But also like I feel like maybe since the pandemic, there's been like also this switch in like going from really sophisticated like film and just media to everything's a lot more casual and not as like gate kept, I guess you could say. Like the home video, like very like casual and um personal is really in now. And I think that appeals to a lot of people and probably more why more people are doing it. And that, like you said, that switch is happening.
Yeah, I think they like that freedom and not being told you have to stick to this kind of curriculum or whatever you want to call it, and they're
Right.
able to do what they want. And
Mm-hmm.
and you know, yeah, some of it, you could tell that it's not Hollywood quality, but
Mm-hmm.
it's still there's some good stuff, and I think it's just going to get
Right.
better over the years.
Exactly.
And so,
Something will always appeal to someone.
oh
That's
yeah,
my philosophy.
oh yeah. So exactly what do you do when you get someone that wants to learn what you're doing?
So a lot of the times people that I interact with that are kind of like my target audience, right? It's a lot of specifically my age group. I'm Gen Z, I'm 23. A lot of us are like kind of wanting to dismantle the whole 9 to 5, like, 40-hour work week, only 2 weeks of vacation, like that whole thing.
Yeah.
And just break free of that. But a lot of kids and or like people right out of college is what I deal with, or people who just aren't in college or going to college for something that they don't like. It's that feeling stuck and feeling pressured by just like society, and maybe parents are usually some of the big factors, or just maybe having a case of imposter syndrome and just like not feeling like justified in whatever their creative skills are. So what I find that is because we grow up, and the arts, the creative industries, and classes that you take, I mean, they're literally labeled extracurricular, which from a very early point in our education, we're learning that arts and creativity and those sorts of careers are extra. They're not as sophisticated as somebody who goes to medical school, or somebody who goes to be an architect, or like what have you, right? So I think that also has a lot to do with why the people that I interact with feel the way that they do. I know that was my experience personally. I luckily had a really supportive like family who they kind of were just like, you really like the arts, go. I have I'm a twin, and I have a younger sister. My twin is a photographer, and my younger sister is in school for graphic design. So, and we're all like, my sister works in photography, and I'm freelance in production and, audio and stuff like that. And we're making a living. Like, I live in New York City. I fully live off of 1099 work and W-2. And it's just also that stigma that people don't see it in their, in their day to day. When you ask a random person, chances are they usually aren't a freelancer or somebody in a creative industry. Well, here in New York, it's a little bit more likely because it's a hub, but
Right.
probably, I mean, Texas too is maybe in Houston a little more. I don't know where you're, like, I know there's art in Texas.
Oh yeah,
They've
mostly
got they've
here in
got a scene.
Austin.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just that we're not used to seeing it in our society, so that contributes to those feelings that I see people and I interact with the people. So but it's just, yeah, it's when usually what I do, or where I start with people, is what are you doing now? And like, because it's just a matter of learning where your hobbies and where your creative skills are applicable. So it's kind of just like giving them that information that society and whatever, doesn't give us right off the bat. So it's kind of just leading them in a direction of being like, hey, this is possible, and go like explore this on your own, explore it on your own, because that's what I did. And the more of the stuff that I try and help people with is just getting over the imposter syndrome. And there's also a side of creativity when you're working as a creative, like you kind of need to know like business.
Mm-hmm.
And I am not a business person at all. I went to school for music technology and film. But specifically with freelance, you know, right off the bat, you probably don't have the budget to have an accountant and, have a bookkeeper and do all this. So it's also, I try and teach like those like fundamental skills of, okay, you need to basically manage, you're a self-employed. So those sorts of skills. And then also, like I said, the imposter syndrome and just the motivation behind it, because we don't get it in society. So
Now this is going to sound like an excuse, but let me kind of set up the scenario here. I took art in college,
mm-hmm,
but I waited till I was 29 years old to go back to college.
mm-hmm,
By that time, I mean, I already had kids. My kids were, gosh, let's see, that would have been what, 1999.
Mhm.
and my kids were like 4 or 5, 6 years old.
Right.
And I went back to school, but here I am trying to take care of my family. I've got a good job working for the city, got the benefits, insurance, the whole 9 yards, and
Mhm.
working overtime because city work is good. It's a good paycheck, but
Right.
you make your money on the overtime. So I got away from college and just kind of left it behind. I think I had 30 hours left, but
Mhm.
next thing you know, I'm a supervisor, and that was my career path basically.
Right.
But so many people like myself, you get in family life and you get that job and you kind of leave your dreams behind.
Right.
How do you encourage people to chase their dreams?
That's a good question. And that's what I also hear that a lot from, like, there's a handful of people who are older than my generation who have found my podcast, or just that I meet even in like day to day, um who like literally blueprint exactly what you just said.
Mhm.
They have families to attend to and all that sort of stuff. um I I am of the believer that if you really love something, you will make time for it, right? So, and obviously, as you get older and you have kids, like you're saying, and your responsibilities become a lot, more weighted on your shoulder, that time for yourself kind of dwindles. Um, and I also I manage a podcast for this women's support group. It's called the Kindling Project, and we're all about um, helping women, you know, figure out how to make time for themselves and delve into their passion projects and that sort of thing. But men experience it too, and I guess the biggest motivator is, like I said, like if you if you got to make time for the things that you enjoy, because what is the point of living? And
Sure.
like I I sometimes get really existential with it, like we're living in this bubble of a society where you know they tell you, you go to school, you graduate high school, you go to college, you get a bachelor's degree, and because that's the minimum education you need now to make a livable income,
Mm.
then you're in this incredible amount of debt. And then maybe you got your degree in arts or whatever, but now you're stuck with all this debt. So maybe you got there to that point of, I made it, I'm going to school for this, blah, 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 blah. And then you're stuck in this debt situation. And not that arts can't make you enough money to live, but everybody grows up with money insecurities. So obviously, the first thing you're going to do right out of college is you're concerned about paying your student loans, paying rent, all of these financial things.
Right.
Um, so I get it. And I get existential because it's like that is kind of the loop we have everybody in, right? Of like, go to work, go home, pay rent, you know, where's the time for yourself, Um, and I was really fortunate, like I was saying, like my family, like the way that I grew up, um, really early on, I found out what hobbies I enjoy and that sort of stuff. So um I guess the biggest motivator is like find like just look outside of your work and your family life and like really like do some digging and see what your hobbies are, like what literally go throughout your day to day and take notes of like what sparks joy, what do you actually enjoy doing, and start to like gather those. And most of the time you can be surprised that like, oh, your one little skill here is applicable in this situation. And even like if for any reason like I was not able to freelance anymore, like I still am aware of like what my skills are that I enjoy doing and I know that I'm good at, that like if I needed to, I could go get a job or whatever it may be. Oops, sorry.
Okay.
That I could go get a job that I still wouldn't hate my life going to every day, but you know, that's because I've done a lot of like looking inward and just getting to know myself. So I don't know, I find that very motivating in itself, just to um get existential a little bit, because I think that's what some of us need, is like that that point that you, like you had made, is really really stressful. It's really
Mm-hmm.
stressful. It sometimes it's really depressing and, you know, tough on your mental health. um
To say the least.
yeah, right, exactly. So the most you can do in that point, I mean, the first thing is just to look inward and start getting to know about yourself, and being existential about it, you kind of, it kind of alleviates a little bit of that stress of like, okay, this is, it's not fake, this is, you know, whatever, this, these situations are all real. But if you see like the light at the end of the tunnel of like, you don't have to get stuck in that loop, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, my situation's going to be a little different than most people's.
Mm-hmm.
When I worked for the city and I got to move up to equipment operator, I actually found a new passion. I loved it. I couldn't get enough of it. I would volunteer just to,
That's
run
great.
equipment. And then when I got to be supervisor and I didn't get to go out and play on the equipment anymore,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of bummed me out. I mean, here I am. You think, oh, you moved up and you're a supervisor and you got a little bit easier. It was boring and driving me out of my mind.
Mm-hmm.
But moving on, I ended up with some health problems. And
Mm-hmm.
anyway, I don't want to get too deep into it. A lot of people that listen to this, they've heard the story a million times. But
Mm-hmm.
basically, I couldn't work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was able to retire. I had over 20 some odd years. So I got my full retirement, and then I'm on disability.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then I didn't want to sit around and just, lay on the couch and watch TV all day. I needed
Right.
something to do or it would drive me to the grave.
Right.
I mean, gosh, you know how many people that retired within 6 months to a year died because they just didn't have any
Depression and like,
passion for life.
yeah.
Yeah. So what I found podcasting.
Mm-hmm.
And funny enough, I had hired this kid to do my editing for me. He
Mm-hmm.
did like one or two videos and then ghosted me.
Oh.
So my idea was I'm going to learn to do this myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I found a good program. I used VSDC
Cool.
and found it on YouTube, how to run it and use it. I spent weeks just watching a few seconds of the video and then do the editing and go
Mm-hmm.
back and forth till finally, I mean, I can do it in my sleep now.
Right.
I found a new love.
YouTube University.
Right, right. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, if I was able to, I would like to actually do editing for a living.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, I mean, I kind of got to cheat, I guess you'd say, because I have my retirement and disability to fall back on. But
Mm-hmm.
I thought, why not? Um,
Right.
I want to get into the more detailed part of editing, really
Mm-hmm.
deep diving. Do you like help people my age to get into this?
Um, I haven't, I've had a few people who were in similar situations, like you were saying, like had a city job, have kids, and kind of had to put their interest in their creative side on the back burner. Um, he was specifically a writer.
Mm,
Um, and it was kind of that same thing of like, I mean, not an excuse or like a you had your retirement. Like,
Mm-hmm.
use the hell out of that. Like, you put in all that freaking work, for the 20 some odd years that you worked. There is nothing wrong with, using that as a cushion. And sometimes that's what I tell people of, like, you should be saving anyway. Like, I feel like anybody should be saving
Oh yeah.
money. Make a savings fund to, like, be able to give you that pillow. I mean, the way that I transitioned into freelance specifically was, I had a regular job. It was still in my career fields. Like, I worked at a recording studio, and then I worked at um, a corporate production studio, and I hated it. And there were some freelance opportunities I was able to do, like, in between those jobs. Like, on my 2 days off, I would take it. And what the biggest eye opener for me was just, like, the freedom in it. So I was in those jobs. I was slowly, like you can transition into things, like, if you're working. And that's what I tell a lot of people who are older and kind of are so set in their lives and their careers, or, like, just what they're doing in their life, is you can transition. Like, the like 10 minutes a day adds up. It really adds up. And if that means you're watching a 10-minute YouTube video every day on how to edit, or whatever that passion is that you have, like, that may seem like a little bit of time, but you can learn a lot in
Oh
in
yeah.
10 minutes. You can, I mean, think of the time that you spend. I have an iPhone, right? And it tells you every Sunday, it tells you how many hours you spent on your phone. That freaks me out. I'm like, I've spent an average of 9 hours a day on my stupid little phone. Let me spare 10 minutes to watch a YouTube video, or let me spare 10 minutes to research, or let me spare 10 minutes. What I also tell people is, maybe you already have that set of skills, right? Like, you went to college for it, or you've been doing it since you were a kid. Create, like, do it 10 minutes a day. Like, write, go learn a new song on your guitar, like, something. 10 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day. Like, you can use those little things to transition. And that's sort of what the timeline, I feel like, is that's helpful, is, like, find the time for it, to just do it as your passion and just get back into it, right? And then whenever you're at a comfortable point of whatever. The way that I found out about freelancing was through this woman. Her name's Alexandra Frizzulo, and she has a podcast called the Freelance Fairy Tales.
Mm-hmm.
She and there's so many people who make 6-7 figures from Fiverr, Upwork. Now there's a bunch more. There's Revolancer. Like, there are so many freelancing platforms. And again, I'm specifically talking about freelance just because that's, as a creative, that's where I feel like you get the most freedom to do what you want. Because I find a lot of creatives, like, don't do well in, like, a normal structured job. And this is just me. Like, there's something for everybody's. People flourish in different environments, right? But that building, like, a portfolio per se, and just getting your skills, like, ramped up and ready, put that on your resume. Like, make a website, like, and you can make a portfolio for free. Like, then you can start either freelancing on your own, and, going on Fiverr or those freelancing sites, or now you can start applying for, like, entry level jobs. Or, like, there's so many Facebook groups nowadays where, like, I'm in a bunch where it's like, I need a podcast editor, or I need a production assistant. Like, everything is at our disposal nowadays. Like, if you want something that bad,
Mm-hmm.
you have to put in the effort still. That's what I tell people a lot too, which is sort of ends up being a little bit discouraging, but it's like working as a creative is just as time consuming and it's a real job, and
Right.
that's what I think we don't get that because again, ever since you're a kid, it's extra, 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 and it's not sophisticated enough. And like, it's not going to be easy, but nothing in life that's worth it is easy,
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I do have concerns because once I start making so much money, then they take my benefits away from me. And I
Mm,
mean, I'm at the doctor's office 2, 3
right.
days out of the month, and
Mm-hmm.
at the hospital, this procedure, that procedure. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I've already had 3 surgeries in just the last couple of years,
Wow.
and
See, and that's the thing that I'm still navigating because I'm 23, so I still have this window of time. I think I have until I'm 26 to stay
mhm,
under my parents, right? But I'm using this time to, what are the options of benefits and stuff for freelancers, and I'm just trying to utilize my this advantage point as much as I can right now. But you're so right. Like, that's another big deciding factor for people is your benefits and your health insurance. But what I often argue, and I don't know if this is just from my experience growing up, I can't tell you how many times I've not heard one single good thing come out of my parents' mouth about any of their insurance and benefit programs that their employers offer them. Like, to my
Medicare is
knowledge,
not much better.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, why is that holding you back? Like, why is that tying to your job if it's shit anyway? Like, I literally have not heard anybody who loves their insurance programs or their benefit programs from their job. And I don't know, I don't know that side of things yet. I'm trying to educate myself. And I don't know if there are benefit packages for freelancers and stuff like that. I
Mhm.
don't know if it's going to be any better. But again, is that even really avoidable? And is that just like a a a, a product of our society that we live in, that you know the pharmaceutical companies have all of the knowledge in the world and all this power, just everybody just wants to make money,
Yep.
that it's more rooted in the healthcare system than it is in like your job and like that sort of thing. So but I get that, like, in a lot of what I find with people like of all ages is that the money insecurity thing, or just like financial insecurity.
Yeah.
And it, like, I still struggle with it. Like, I know I can see on paper that I'm making enough money to live in New York City on my own, pay rent, pay all of my bills, pay a car bill, eat, cook, like everything. I get it. I get it. I get it. I get it. And like, I know those expenses go up once you get older, once you have kids, like all of this other things.
Oh yeah.
Um, like, it's just sad that that's what holds people back. And it's hard, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make a drink, sort of thing. Like,
Yeah.
because that's a psychological thing. Like, the money insecurity is a psychological thing, I find, at least. Like, with myself, it's like i I really do struggle with it. But yeah, sorry, I went on a side tangent, but
Oh no,
right
no,
back
no,
up.
that's fine. Well, it's hard to not be discouraging when you're trying to tell people to chase their dreams when
Mm-hmm.
they're in situations like mine. I mean,
Right.
my Medicare, it's the difference between me spending like $90 at the doctor's or my $30 copay at the doctor, or
Right.
paying $200 or $300 for a medication and compared
Mm-hmm.
to paying $15 for medication.
Right.
I don't want to sound discouraging. I want people to pursue what they're doing in life.
Right.
These are especially folks around my age,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to the doctor more frequently. You're
Right.
having to get these procedures done.
Hmm.
We we want to get that really good paying job, maybe not necessarily as a freelancer, but a full time.
Right.
But we
Right.
don't have the pedigree behind us.
Hmm.
Are these folks not even going to consider you if you don't have a degree?
I have found that especially in like a Fiverr aspect or hold on, let me rephrase that. Back to kind of what I said before, there's a market for anybody, right? If you have a service and as long as you're completing that service to a reputable degree, like the finished product is coming out in a way that people want to buy it. I have not like I don't know if I've ever bought anything and like or like bought a service of anything and like really questioned like where I mean besides like doctors and like that sort of thing. But even then I'm like, okay, I see your plaque on the wall. Like I don't know anything about that. Like what if you got a degree and you're in a completely different realm of medicine? I don't know. But besides that in art it's a lot more like flexible, like creativity.
Mhm.
You see all these people on Etsy on those little sites just like making their own things. If people like it, they're gonna buy it. And if it's in their price range or whatever, but even the price range thing, if you have low prices, there's somebody who's gonna buy it, right? If you have medium prices, if you have high prices, there's a market for everything. Same like if you think of car brands, right? How is Porsche and Ferrari, like there's a market for those people. Is it me? No. Will it ever be? No. But there is still a market for those people who want to buy those things at that higher price. And then there's lower prices, car brands, whatever. I think of it as the same thing. But I'm trying to think about what your question was. um
I was wondering,
oh, the skill, like the skill
yeah,
base, right?
if you wanted to get a full-time job with I don't know, a film company or something, and
Right.
you don't have that piece of paper saying, hey, he's been to
Right.
school and done this.
the 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 special thing about the film industry and the production industry is it really is, it's not what you know, it's who you know, right?
Right.
And I think that works on a lot of people's benefit. I have worked on film sets where people got degrees in business management or didn't go to school at all and have like a certificate certificate where people have a certificate just in their specialty,
Mhm.
right? And the reason that they got the job usually is because they knew somebody, right?
Yeah.
And they know somebody because they've worked with them before. And it's just like that chain of like how it works in production specifically is usually you climb a ladder, right? You start as a production assistant,
Mhm.
which to be fair, you really don't it obviously there's the plus side of having the education and like whatever
Mhm.
behind just to be like familiar with it. But personally, I was really disappointed with the the skills that I came out of college with. I did very well in school. I got a 4.0. Um, I didn't go to like a super well-known school. I got my degree. I experienced life in college, and I worked my ass off to get 2 internships, and that's where I learned, right? And I'm finding that it's more about life experiences than it is necessarily about the pedigree that specifically in film. Um, and really, I could line up like dot to dot to dot the connection of I knew a guy who 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 knew a guy that got me to where I am now. And my first production assistant job, like, yeah, they like to hire people who have like a film background and stuff, but because I also have a position where I need to hire like production assistants, and half the time I'm like, I have a bunch of friends who just are hardworking and are responsible and are able to work long shifts or whatever it may be. And I'm like, hey, do you want to get paid $250 for a day to be on a film set and just like work really long day, but like maybe carry some stuff around and like, do some physical labor. But I don't know, it's like those that beginning point of that ladder, specifically in production, is more of a personality thing, like hardworking, responsible, work ethic, um, go-getter kind of attitude. And that will get you really far. And I feel like it's the same in any other aspect. Like if you have like, I mean, I'm sure you can speak on it, like your experience of like learning how to edit on your own and like launching a podcast and stuff, like that's a go-getter attitude. Like I'm sure, like, I don't know if you do podcast editing as income or anything like that, but
I'm working on it. I'm
yeah,
getting there.
see,
I'm getting a little bit
exactly.
closer.
And that's the point. You have perseverance is such a big thing. And I think on the consumer side of things, or even like the hiring manager side of things, yeah, you need to get past that resume, you know, scan or whatever it is. But do you know, like, I've never lied on my resume, but talking to other people, so many people lie on their resumes.
Yeah.
Like, I am not condoning that, but I you could stretch the truth. Like, there is nothing wrong with saying that you, like putting on your resume or whatever it is, your cover letter or whatever, your job application, that you have personally been doing something for 10 years or whatever, however many years it is. And as long as you have a portfolio, that's all people want to see. Nobody cares. Like, people, especially in the creative industry, they want to see what you can do
Hmm.
most of the time. So I guess that's kind of my roundabout answer, really long roundabout answer. Um, is but that's why it's so important, like in like you're saying, like building a portfolio in those times and using that blanket, like build a portfolio, network, and just persevere
Hmm.
and see how it plays out.
Well, I do kind of have a foot in the door, I guess you could say. I have some friends that are in television shows and movies, and I actually did a pilot for a show some years ago. Never
Mm-hmm.
got picked up, unfortunately, but I mean, I kind of know what goes on.
Right.
So I really love editing. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
what people's dreams are. I don't know what entails with what they want to do. I just want them to at least take a chance, because you
Mm-hmm.
get to be my age and most of your life has passed by, and I'm looking to travel and
Mm-hmm.
see the country and
Mm-hmm.
enjoy retirement.
Right.
Uh, I have.
And a lot of people align with that.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I have picked up some really cool skills that I never thought I could do. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, we didn't have this kind of stuff when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
These computer programs are just remarkable. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I could see a lot of people could really learn to do this kind of stuff if they just take the
Right.
time.
Right. And that's why I specifically target the younger audience, because you got to hit them
Hmm.
before they get, I don't want to say stuck, but in those more challenging positions, um and all the power to like people like yourself who are in those really hard situations and still finding time. Like that is so inspiring. And but yeah, that's why it's so important, and why I felt like somewhat obligated, because I was going throughout my life, and the post college graduate thing of like, oh, what are you doing, blah, 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 blah. And I was telling people what I was doing. They were like, oh man, how'd you get into that, blah 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 blah. And I got tired of repeating myself, so I made a podcast about it, and um that sort of stuff. But um there it also comes down to a very like fundamentally human aspect, I think, is that people just want to live and enjoy life
Yeah.
and travel and see the world and have families and do the things that are innate to human beings. And I think on a really deep level we all feel that, and some of us are more okay with just cruising along in the societal bubble that we're in, and some of us get tired of it. And it hits people at different phases, and some people it doesn't hit at all. But it's always fun to like spark that conversation with people too. Like I literally was just working with somebody last week, and it was four of us, and like the three of us were getting really existential, like kind of like how I was talking before. And she was like, you guys think about that stuff? And I'm like, yeah. Like I think we were talking about, there's a new show on Netflix called like The History of Infinity. Like completely blew my mind. And I'm like, it 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 took me on another level of existentialism. And this girl was just like, it you could tell like it scares some people to, like, and that's a lot of the issues is, the insecurities and also fear. Some people are okay with not knowing and not getting to that point of like insight, and just like really delving deep into like why things are the way they are and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also rooted in fear. Like humans are very just naturally curious. So if you're not curious about infinity and space and just the fact that time goes on or whatever it may be, I get it, you're scared. But that was
Yeah.
exactly what this girl was. She was just like, I don't care. And like that doesn't bother me in my day to day. And I'm like, I'm a little jealous of that actually, because I wish I could go through my day to day life and not like think about the meaning of life every 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm. It's funny. I interviewed a guy the other day that him and his girlfriend, they they travel all over,
Hmm.
and that's what they do. That's all they do is they
Hmm.
travel, and they'll pick up a little job here and there when they need the essentials or what have you. But other than that,
Hmm.
that's all they do. And we were talking about how on most people's deathbeds,
Hmm.
that they get asked that question, what are your regrets, or
Right.
what has held you back? And 99.9% of the time they always say it's fear.
Hmm.
Now what sucks is when you do want to follow your passion and you just said, you know what, I'm going to do it, I want to be happy, and you don't get backing from those around you,
Hmm.
which was kind of my situation. It sucks when you
Right.
have family that tells
Yeah.
you, no, you need to stick with that job. You've got a good
Hmm.
job there and you got all these benefits. And
Hmm.
yeah, I got all those benefits, but how's that going to
I'm not
be
happy.
beneficial if I'm
Yeah.
not happy when I finally do retire and 6 months
Hmm.
later I'm so depressed or wore
Hmm.
out that I just pass away?
Right. And
So what did I work for?
exactly. And all of it, this is also my little tangent of like everybody needs to go to therapy, because people who spew that at you are projecting their own fear.
That's what I say.
Yeah, like, and they're just jealous of like,
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had anything happen to me in terms of like somebody coming at me for like, what are you doing, like you're an imposter, like you have no right to be, blah 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 blah. But I've gotten to a point, because I go to therapy and I know my own habits of projecting and like it's simply when people are jealous or fear that they're not doing what you're doing because it scares them. They're gonna make
Mm,
you feel uncomfortable because they're uncomfortable.
yep.
But they don't want to feel uncomfortable, so they make other people feel uncomfortable.
Look, it
And
was
there's
all.
the perseverance again.
Yeah. Yeah. It was awful when I started coming up here to Austin and visiting.
Mm-hmm.
I got remarried, and my new wife, her family and friends live up here in Austin.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd come travel and I'd stay the weekend. And I'm like, oh my God, it's so beautiful up here. I don't have
Mm-hmm.
those refineries around me and have to smell that
Well,
stench. And here's nice, beautiful, clear water I can get into. And
mm-hmm.
all the animals around here. And I fell in love with this area.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided that I was going to move up here. And
Mm-hmm.
now this is the benefit of working for the city here in
Mm-hmm.
Texas. You can take your benefits with you.
Right.
So
Oh, nice.
so my retirement, it's all part of one big system here in Texas. So I get to keep my retirement. I found a job up here, come up here
Good
and
for
started
you.
working.
See, you find the
But
loopholes. That's
yeah,
another thing too.
but this was the awful part of it was when I had talked to a family member and said, I want this because I think I'd be a lot happier. And all I got was, oh no, it costs too much to live up there, and you don't want to live up there, this, that, and just one thing after another.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, why would you discourage me from doing something that I feel would make me happy?
Yeah.
And as much as I miss my family down there in the Houston area, I mean, I'm three
Mm-hmm.
and a half hours away. So if I really, really want to go see them,
Right.
I can hop in the car, I can drive, but I don't get to see them every day. But
Mm-hmm.
as I told you before, when I uh, go to visit, I'm always reminded of why I moved in the first place.
Right.
There's nothing like getting into a nice, beautiful creek or river that you can
Mm-hmm.
actually see your feet when you walk out into the water.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
I have
See, and
rabbits that come through the yard and burrow
right.
holes in the backyard. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
See, and that is so like specifically with nature, that is so innate to
mhm,
humans. Like,
yeah,
of course it's gonna make us happy. Not sitting in a I live in a basement and it's like terrible. Like I hate not seeing the light and stuff like that. Like I have to,
yeah,
you know, more actively go out into nature, but I feel that with the like I I'm already sick of so I grew up on Long Island and then like I was saying I my parents did the Long Island thing and when it got too cold up here and their bones couldn't take it anymore, they moved to Florida and went to high school in Florida, came back up here for college and now I live here on my own and as much as I love it and I know I needed to be up here to like kind of put myself in a situation where I could succeed in my career and my creative skills,
hmm
um, I am not a fan of it as much. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear the heater. Um, and I don't know if it's just paying rent, but it's so expensive to live here. It's getting so dangerous. Like there's so many other aspects to living in New York that people don't, they romanticize living in New York. And I'm like, girl, if you're not
hmm
making 6, 7 figures and living here, it is hell.
I can only imagine. If,
So like I'm in that phase of like, and then like even just the way that we're educated in society, like I was saying, like you go to school, you get an education, you work a job to pay off bills.
mhm,
Um, we're also not educated financially and like financially literate. Like I'm taking it upon myself to read a whole book about taxes, because they don't teach us that and all the loopholes that are in taxes and all the benefits, the government gives you and even just like real estate too.
mhm,
Like I'm sick of paying rent. Like I could be paying a mortgage with the money that I'm paying for rent. and something it's going towards something that I can own. Or I can build a freaking house. Like I've been really into the whole homesteading thing lately. Like that's a fantasy of mine. Like I would love to buy a piece of property. There are a lot of people who do it in Texas, buy a piece of property, build land, and live off of the land, like off
Hmm.
grid. I don't know if I would want to go completely off grid, but like
I want to
just
go
all
mostly off grid. I'll put it
right,
that way.
right.
I'm learning how to grow things in a vegetable garden.
Oh,
So
that's so cool. But like that's stuff that is so, again, innate to our humanity that our society stemmed from. We're so far from it now, and it's having such like terrible like repercussions of like anxiety, depression, and all of this. It's like, look how happy you are when you go back to nature and like
yes.
that sort of stuff.
Oh,
But
you have no idea. That's how I ground myself when I'm
mhm,
feeling anxiety or just feeling depressed. I get
mhm,
out into the nature. Heck, just even going in my backyard and being amongst my vegetables.
mhm,
It's like I'm walking with God. It's
right,
beautiful. And I went to New York some years ago, and
mhm.
we were just going to be there for a few days, and it was cool. I have to say I enjoyed myself, but I
You
was
were in
never
Manhattan,
I think we were
or
in Manhattan. We stayed in Harlem.
okay, right,
I forgot where all we went to, but
mm,
of course I had to get some pizza while I was there, and it
right.
was the best pizza in the world, I have to say. Um, y'all don't have iced tea. I'm gonna tell you that right now. Y'all don't have iced tea up there.
I
Not
know. I had that from living in Florida. See, I hate iced tea.
really.
Because yeah, because I grew up here, like my version of iced tea is like lemon iced tea, like
I
Arnold Palmer, like half and half. And then I like came to Florida and like people would come to school with like the 7-Eleven big gulp cups of like sweet tea, and I'm like, "Ugh." Or people just drink it unsweet too, and I'm like, oh my god, I could never.
well, I have to use sweet and low, but
Yeah,
I do like my sweet tea.
yeah, but yeah, we don't have that here.
Yeah, I remember visiting well, I went to a restaurant, finally decided to go to a restaurant, and I ordered an iced tea. And I said, now, please, no lemon. It has to be unsweet. Well, they brought me that instant stuff, and I'm
Oh
like, oh,
yeah.
I said, no, and I just give me water.
Yeah.
And it was
Which,
fun to visit, but I just can't see living there. I have to be
yeah.
here in the nature.
See, yeah, exactly. Like, and that's what I mean. Like, people romanticize living here, and New York is a beautiful place. It is in some aspects, but it's all like that's also an illusion. Like, there's crime here. There's bad things that happen. Like, and I think just any city living. Like, I don't have a dishwasher. I don't have a washer and dryer in my apartment, and I'm paying $1,400 in rent for what? To have a room with like a bed, and like I have a two-bedroom, which is nice, but it's in a basement, and I have no wind. Like you're giving stuff to or sacrificing stuff. Like, oh my god, I can't wait until like I don't know if I would if I had to choose a dishwasher over having in-unit washer and dryer. I don't know what I would choose, but I would be happy with either to
I'm
have
gonna
one.
make you cry a little bit. I pay 1,800 a month here for this house. I
Mm-hmm.
have two offices that are attached to the garage.
Mm-hmm.
There's air conditioning set up out here in the garage and the offices, four bedrooms. I got a big backyard. We have a
Mm-hmm.
dishwasher. I have a washer and dryer, the microwave.
The tears.
Yeah, oh my God. I couldn't get anything like this back where I lived
Right.
before. I would have been probably paying close to what you're paying
Mm-hmm.
for a small place. Now,
Right.
I will say if you live in Austin, it's going to be a little bit more expensive. I like
Mm-hmm.
living outside and it's more friendly country folks,
Mm-hmm.
my kind of
Right.
thing. If that's what they want, they need to work for it, because this is
Mm-hmm.
well worth it.
Right.
It's nothing like being able to go 10 minutes down the road and get in the water.
Mm-hmm.
uh my kids and my grandkids, when they come to visit, they love it, because we go out to the
Mm-hmm.
lake and they actually can see their feet in the water. They don't get that where they live. I mean, if you're going to get
Right.
in the water up down there in Houston, it's going to be a
You better
swimming
have a
pool.
tetanus shot. You better have like
Yeah,
all of your, yeah.
yeah, even Galveston. Everybody thinks, oh, it's Galveston Island or on the Gulf Coast. That's the nastiest water. You have to go take a shower as soon as you get out of that
Yeah.
water, and you don't
Ooh.
want to get in that water.
Mm-hmm.
You can't see your feet,
Mm-hmm.
and you only take a couple of steps into the water.
Right.
But yeah, it's well worth it if you really, really want this kind of life.
Mm-hmm.
There's, I mean, there's even little towns you can go to here that you're 20, 30 minutes away from the nearest store,
Right.
and you're maybe a mile or two down the road from your nearest neighbor.
Right.
And I mean, if you can adapt to that kind of living, which I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I grew up going and working on my uncle's farm, and that was
Mm-hmm.
out in the middle of nowhere. It didn't bother me.
Right. Right.
So if you
And that's
if
the
you want
thing
it.
too, like uh another thing that I feel like our society like just brainwashes us in is that you have to pick one thing in like any aspect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your career, where you live, you know, anything. You have to pick one thing and stay with it your whole entire life. And that is so not how humans function. Like at some part of your life, a city, you may have wanted to live in the city, and then you get older and your life changed. Like change is inevitable, so like why shouldn't what we do and where we live and how we act and all of those also not change? You know what I mean? Like I can't believe that people had to pick one thing, or still kind of do. They pick one thing and they do it for 30 freaking years.
Yeah.
I could literally never. Like, and no wonder people have like depression and all that. It's just like,
Mhm.
you can relate everything back to that sort of stuff all the time. And it's what I find is that, and I don't know if this is just because I'm a creative mind, it's just like it's so much more heightened in creative people and people who, artists and stuff like that. But I don't know. I'm mostly surrounded by a lot of creative people. So I don't know how like finance people or like business people think about the world, but somewhere
Mhm.
deep down, maybe, probably.
Well, I mean, personally, I love to paint, I love to draw, I love to sculpt, I love to whittle.
Cool.
All those things, they bring me joy, and I don't know if I would really want to do it for a living. Because I know
Right. And
when,
that's the other thing.
yeah, because
You don't always need to do stuff for money.
yeah, if it got to be a job, then I'm
Sometimes it
afraid I
sucks the
would,
life out of it. Yeah.
yeah, I wouldn't like it anymore, and I don't want to get to that point. This is something that I love, and I mean, I'll be honest with you, I don't do it as often as I really should. And
Mm-hmm.
I get into my podcasting, and it seems like that's all my brain is focused on. Getting guests to come on the show and doing the editing, uploading, promoting, all that. I know,
Mm-hmm.
don't get me wrong. I love doing the podcast. I can't imagine doing anything else. And
Right. It
the,
does have a chore aspect to it, though.
yeah,
I feel
yeah,
I
yeah.
feel that.
Don't do it unless you're going to be committed to it and you love it.
Mm-hmm.
And don't
Right.
be afraid. Maybe your dreams change as the years go by. Like I said, I
And they
thought about,
will. That's the
yeah,
thing. Like they will.
yeah, I wanted to be into graphic design and things like that, but found out that I loved podcasting. Didn't know
There
I
you go.
would. But
And
yeah.
that's another thing. You never know unless you try, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
That's
My
another
boyfriend's
thing.
really bad about that. Like he he's not a pessimist, but there's some things I'm like, he says, and I'm like, but did you try it? And I remember my dad always used to, like, growing up with food, eating, like, trying new food. I'd be like, I don't like it. He was like, well, did you try it? And now I get it. Because it's the same thing with anything in life. Try it, fail, succeed, try again, whatever, but you have to try.
There's so many benefits to just trying things.
Mm-hmm.
The
Get
whole
outside of your comfort zone.
exactly. Even some of the traveling that I did, I didn't get outside of Texas. And then
Mm-hmm.
I visited places like Ohio and Tennessee, New York, New Jersey, all these
Mm-hmm.
places, and you meet so many incredible people, and
Right.
you see new things. You might
Mm-hmm.
find something else you love to do. You
Mm-hmm.
just never know where it's going to lead, and
Mm-hmm.
you just have to take chances. Don't get so caught up in everyday blah 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 like I did.
Mm-hmm.
It took me till I was in my 40s before I really started to explore the world, and that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of sad.
And but even like think about, like, that's another thing. Like 40 isn't old. Like you're half, you still have another half of, even more than half a life to live,
We
So
we hope.
optimism, yes.
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
Fingers crossed, legs crossed, everything crossed.
Um, my 50s is it's become I guess my second childhood. Well, I tell people I still haven't got out of the first one yet, so I don't think it
Mm-hmm.
counts. But
Mm-hmm.
if I can start, anybody can. Just
Right.
please do something to bring some joy into your life. Otherwise, what are you
What is
gonna?
the point?
What is the
Yeah.
point? What is the point?
Money's fake, time's fake, everything.
Now, what's the name of your podcast again?
It's called the How I Diaries.
And just when do you usually release your episodes?
I just wrapped season one.
Hmm.
So I believe it was 25 episodes. And I kind of, the first season is just all of like a how I became a freelancer, how I bookkeep, how I, a bunch of just like tips. And then I'm kind of sorting out the second season right now. My first season I batch dropped, so I would drop 5 episodes once a month,
Hmm.
on the same day. So but I think I'm gonna try and do weekly going forward, and start that in the new year and have some guests. That's what I want my second show to really be about. I would love to have you on and talk about your experience and how
Sure.
you um, got to the point of, like, I don't know. I think it would be great to hear like your perspective of your life and your age and all that sort of stuff.
It's a very interesting story of how I got into doing this
Mm-hmm.
podcast. So I would love to share that with you and your audience.
Yeah,
Let me know. I'd love to set up time for that.
cool. I will definitely reach out. I'm definitely planning for once the top of the new year hits. So I'm still in like pre-production.
Ah, I got you. Now, do you have a website?
I do. It's my name, CatherineDiRosa.com. And on there, I specifically advertise all my podcasting side of my work. So if people are looking for an editor or a manager, or I also do sound design and, you know, that sort of stuff related to podcasting, mixing. Um, but yeah, that's my website. And then all my other stuff, like I don't have any of my like film production stuff on my website. It's just specifically for podcasting.
Are you on all the socials?
I'm on Instagram. I'm at How I Diaries, and then my personal is at Catherine DeRosa. And Instagram, that's the one that I really use. I don't have Twitter. I don't have I have Facebook, but um, I'm on LinkedIn, but don't use it as much as I should, but Instagram is where I'm most active.
I actually love LinkedIn. I spend more time on LinkedIn than any of the
Really?
others. Oh yeah, I get a lot of really good connections. And if you
Mm-hmm.
haven't heard of it, you should try it. It's called Alignable.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of good professional connections on there.
Ah,
Yes.
AL.
Ignable, Alignable.
Perfect. See, and here's another example of you do things, you meet new people, they,
Mhm.
now I have a new thing that I can look into and network.
If you definitely want some serious connections,
Hmm.
Alignable is a perfect place
I have
to
never heard
go.
of that before. I'm excited to check it out.
I actually got invited by one of my guests to go on there, and I was so
Look
glad
at
I
that.
did.
The
You know,
chain.
real quick story.
Hmm.
I was looking for people that were local that I might be able to feature, and I
Hmm.
found that there was a guy who was an author, and he lived in the next town over. And I
Hmm.
also saw that he was a songwriter and whatnot. And so I messaged him on there and I said, "Hey, would you like to be on the show?" And he's like, "Sure, I'd love to." And I figured he'd be around my age, a little older. And
Hmm.
anyway, found out that he was quite a bit older, but he had performed on Broadway. He had
Cool.
written uh, stuff that was on Broadway, produced on Broadway. And he wrote a song that Barbara Streisand recorded.
Wow.
And he was an author. He gave me a copy of all his books. And anyways, his
Look at
name is
that.
his name's Cy, and I
Hmm.
say he lives about 10 minutes from me, and we end up striking up a friendship, and we go hang out at our favorite little hamburger joint, and
Nice.
you never know. Just
You never know.
take a chance. I've met some pretty incredible people, some famous people just reaching out. What's the worst thing they can
Hmm.
say? No.
Exactly. That's my mindset nowadays is like, what's the worst that's going to happen?
Mm-mm. And if they say no, how's it going to change your life? You're no different
Right.
than uh,
And usually, when you think about like what's the worst thing that's going to happen, what you end up thinking of is still not even the worst thing that could happen. You know what I mean?
exactly. Well, I appreciate you coming on my show.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm so happy to have had the chance to talk to you. I'm glad we were able to reschedule and line up our times.
well, I am going to share your links in the description. And so people can just kind of go in there, click on it, and go straight to it, make it easy for them.
All right.
Uh,
Thank you.
and yeah, let me know. I'd love to come on your show.
Yeah, I will definitely. The email that I have is you're a good email to
Yes,
contact you on. Okay, perfect.
that's my main one. And I also want to thank all of you out there. If you happen by and this is your first time, I appreciate you taking time to listen, and I hope you'll come back. Please hit that subscribe button. For my regulars, you know how much I love y'all. It's because of y'all I get to do this. So until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favourite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network